Good morning. Today I want to talk about the topic, how do Amish consider what is worldly or not too worldly? As you guys know, every single Amish community has their own rules and their ordinance. That ordinance is what they follow until death. When you get baptized and you make the oath, they believe you are making the oath between God and God's church, the Amish, that you will now follow those rules in that ordinance for the rest of your life until death. That is considered, in the old order Amish, that is considered a more important, more serious oath than a marriage oath. So I want to talk about the worldly thing. The reason this topic came up is because of the video I did yesterday. I showed all of you guys in that short video yesterday about the pictures inside of my one-room Amish schoolhouse that I went to. Thank God for all the English worldly people that took pictures and sent them to me. And since I've been online, they have contacted me. And I'm actually really amazed and even shocked how many different pictures I was able to get sent to me of people that knew my Amish family and community and had a good relationship and would take certain pictures around the farm and even the school. And now I have those to my possession. In those pictures, guys, there was some lunch pails that I showed you guys in that clip of a plastic lunchbox, Eglo, the brand Eglo, and a lot of people's like, oh wow, I'm shocked that plastic isn't too worldly. You know, it's something that the Amish didn't make, and that is why I'm doing this video. So today I want to educate all of you guys, hopefully answer some of those questions of why do Amish do what they do. First of all, before I dive in, you have to recognize that every single Amish community is different one from another. The reason there's so many Amish communities is because they disagreed with the current ordinance of rules, and therefore they broke away, maybe got a couple families together, and they went and bought some land, and they will start their own Amish community. And then they will introduce a ordinance with rules, and now they're going to say, we couldn't have worldly gloves made by Carhartt. But now, in this ordinance, it's now considered okay and we're going to go to heaven, even if we have it. Because they believe whatever's in the ordinance is God's ordinance in God's church. So whatever the congregants agree on, every baptized, you got to be baptized to vote on these issues. If you vote on and agree on that, now it's okay. And now God will still be pleased if you allow that to, even though the church you just came from, you could not get to heaven because the church agreed it's too worldly, so therefore it's too worldly. But now, since we started a new church and we all agreed that it's not too worldly to have maybe a glove or whatever made by the worldly people, now, since we agree, God's church agrees that it's not considered too worldly, now if we die wearing one of these, we can now still get to heaven. Guys, that's why I want to talk about this, to educate you guys. And I'll simply put it this way, though, too. When it comes to all religion, a lot of people are confused. Mennonite, Hutterite, Amish, I mean, go down the list. Even denominations out here that do certain things that are not in the Bible. I will always say this. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense when it comes to religious hypocrisy. That usually disturbs religious people when I say that, but it's true. I lived it. I went through it. Nothing makes sense to the outside world looking in when it comes to man-made rules and religious hypocrisy. So, yes, that video clip yesterday, everybody was saying in a comment, out of 200 plus comments, the number one thing that I saw come up in the comments was, aren't those lunch boxes that the Amish kids are using in that school worldly? Because the worldly people made it, but the Amish people are using it. Yes, that's right. Did you know the very fabric that the Amish clothes are made from? All the Amish clothes are homemade. But the fabric that they used to make those pants of mine when I was growing up Amish out of denim, did you know those rolls of denim come from worldly stores like Joann Fabrics? Yes. So even though they're making a lot of homemade things, it makes it look like they're self-sufficient. Even the oldest of old order, the strictest, which is called Swartzentruber Amish, even though they are the strictest out of all Amish, and it appears that they are self-sufficient, they are still not 100% self-sufficient. They have salt shakers and pepper shakers on their table that are plastic that were bought from Walmart. Now, the very fabric they use to make their own homemade clothing comes in bulk, by the way, because they stock up on that for a while. And my mom, I remember when she got a hold of her sisters and they got a whole bunch of rolls of denim material to make, I don't know how many pairs that you can get out of that roll, but I know that it lasts my mom for probably 10 plus years to make homemade clothing. But it was bought from those stores that have technology and machines to roll it in a roll and produce the denim material. So if it wasn't for the outside worldly people, they wouldn't have that denim to make what appears to be self-sufficient, and they're making their own homemade clothing. And I want to say this, just to go real deep to try to educate you guys on this. If any Amish or any religious group, let's say, wants to appear to the rest of the world that they are 100% self-sufficient and don't need any government or any worldly people, then they would have to live like the Indians did. I'm dead serious about that. They would have to make their own cloak, their own clothing out of sheepskin, deer hide, animal fur for their hats and their clothing. I mean, if you really want to appear and put on a show to the world that you are 100% self-sufficient, then you would have to do exactly the way the Indians did. Because they didn't need no Americans. They were here before we were. And they were self-sufficient. Now, that's what's truly self-sufficient. But I wanted to educate you guys on, a lot of you guys that think that the Amish are completely cut off from the world and self-sufficient, they never have and they never will be. Because if it wasn't for the worldly people that they call worldly, by the way, I only use that word because of these videos. I never use worldly on anything. Nothing is considered worldly. Everything can be used for our benefit. If God gave it to us here on earth, it can be used for God's glory. You can use it for good. It's like a smartphone. They say, oh, that's too worldly. That's the mark of the beast, I was told by one Amish bishop. And I said, well, can you do good with that? Sure. I preach a lot on here. I share the word of God. I can choose to do good with it. Kind of like, and I reminded that bishop, I said, you know, it's kind of like a kitchen knife. What do you guys do with that? Oh, well, we butcher with it and we cut our vegetables. Yeah, that's doing good with it. What else could you do with it? What are you talking about? I said, you could murder somebody with it. You can choose to do bad with it, and you can choose to do good with it. I mean, same way with the phone. Anything that they view as worldly, you can do good with it, or you can choose to do bad with it. I mean, you shun a car. You don't believe in owning one, but you can sit in and ride in it. I could use that car and run over somebody and kill somebody. I can do really bad with that car. I can go out and drink and drive with that car too. But I can choose not to. I can do good with it. Guys, the hypocrisy. That's why I do these videos, to educate you guys. Even a lot of the former Amish that follow me on here have come up against me. Oh, you're a liar. You're a bleepity bleep and this and that and this and that. When you say I'm a liar, it's true for my community, but maybe not for yours. For example, probably 6 to 8 months ago, I did a video on the toilet paper thing. I met 3 different individuals since I've been out of the Amish that came from the Schwarzentuber Amish that said toilet paper to wipe your booty is too worldly. We can't have toilet paper. When I did that video, even the former Amish attacked me and said, you're a liar. You're making stuff up to get views. Well, I confirmed with those 3 individuals, they did not use toilet paper in their Schwarzentuber Amish community. And then I asked them what they were using, since toilet paper was made by the worldly people. And that's so rare. It's probably 1% of the Amish that actually have such a rule not to use toilet paper. Just a second. Yes.
Sorry about the hold up. We kind of got a little
you're good.
going on. Once she gets done unloading him, then I can go ahead and get you unloaded.
Hey, take your time. I get paid by the hour.
All right, cool.
All righty.
Sounds good, man.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow, being all nice and apologizing for taking so long to unload me. Offload, reload in the dock here. I don't care. I get paid by the hour. Take all day if you want. You don't have to apologize to me. But anyway, back to the topic here. The whole toilet paper thing, when 3 individuals confirmed with me that came out of the Schwarzentuber Amish, which some people say are the dirtiest, smelliest Amish on the planet because they're just different than other Amish. They're the most strict, got the most rules. They go barefooted all year round, and a few select of them smoke a pipe. It has to be a certain color pipe and a certain tobacco that they grow themselves and all of that. But anyway, so I asked him, I said, okay, if toilet paper was considered too worldly, because we, in my very strict community, we had toilet paper. We went to the store and bought toilet paper. And I said, what did you use if you did not use toilet paper? And he says, oh, well, lots of times, we would use newspapers. And I said, whoa. Newspapers? Where's newspapers come from? Did you guys make newspapers? No. Newspapers came from the printing press, from the local news sources. Still an item from the worldly people. Guys, that's why I like talking about this stuff. The hypocrisy behind established, organized, man-made religion never makes sense to the outside world that is not aware. And it's also kind of hard to answer everybody's questions. When I do videos like yesterday, everybody saw those worldly Iglo lunch boxes inside the Amish school, and people are like, "Wait a minute, that's worldly. They didn't make that lunchbox. That's a plastic, colorful lunchbox that the worldly people made. I thought that would be too worldly." No. The church voted in that church in Kenton, Ohio, that would be okay as long as the church agrees and signs off that is not worldly. Now, when they redo the rules during Ordnance Church, Ordnungsgemeinde, in German it's called Ordnungsgemeinde, when they do redo the rules and go over everything, they could change that. They could vote and say, you know what? It's been okay for 50 years to have an Iglo lunchbox made by the worldly people, but now let's go ahead and shun that. Let's go ahead and shun that. For example, these gloves, They could say, hey, we've been using these leather gloves made by Carhartt, but you know what? I think it displeases God for wearing worldly Carhartt gloves. Let's go ahead and shun those, and let's just vote that it's worldly. And if the congregants that are baptized vote on that, now for the rest of your life until death, you now cannot wear a Carhartt glove. So I just wanted to talk about that. In the same way with I use this to sweep out my trailer. One of these, they're very effective. They're amazing. In the Amish, we were told that if we had something like this run off of a battery, you'd burn in hell. You'd go to hell for that. It's way too worldly to have one of these. You just click on one battery, and then you turn it on. That's how it works. And it blows so hard, I got my dust flying around in here. But in the Amish, you couldn't have this in my church. But if you go 20 minutes up the road, that Amish community had bicycles. That Amish community had batteries under their buggy seat for really bright LED lights where people can see you from 2 miles down the road, and they hardly ever had any buggy accidents because they had put safety of their children first before religion. And so they allowed batteries. And there they also allowed batteries like this for power tools. For not electricity, but just a battery. And so when you have an Amish church you have questions about for why they might do something while other Amish don't, just recognize that ordinance of the Amish church agreed and signed off and voted that is too worldly. While the church up the road, you might see them using one of these Milwaukee blowers, and they voted that it's not worldly. So that's why I do these videos, to educate you guys, because there's a lot of people that follow me that are in the middle of different Amish communities, different sects of Amish communities. And in northern Indiana the other day, I had somebody message me and say, hey, Eli, you recently said that tractors were forbidden, that you'd go to hell if you had tractors in your community. Yes, my dad actually got shunned because the English neighbor, my dad was struggling that year. We were very poor and it was wet for too long. Dad couldn't get the crops in. So the English neighbor was being very kind and nice and loving, and came and plowed my dad's field for him so he can get his crops in, and disked it all up, chopped it all up. And he got shunned for that because a worldly tractor was used where you could literally complete that field of about 5 acres within a couple hours. He was done. It would have took us several days, almost a week, to get that done. And that was considered shunnable by the Amish church. But in northern Indiana, this individual said, hey, I heard what you said about the tractors, but up here, they're taking tractors everywhere they go. But on Sunday, they drive the horse and buggy for church, the holy day. And I explained to them that, that's obviously a branch of Amish that my community would never associate with or do business with or fellowship with, because their ordinance of the rules don't align. We had 3 churches. Now I think there's more than a dozen. But at the time when I was growing up, before I left, there were 3 churches that had an ordinance that almost perfectly aligned with our ordinance. And it was Orange County, Indiana, Chester Hill, Ohio, our group, Kenton, Ohio, and then Gladwin, Michigan, were the ones that we could go date a girl. We could go date a girl and marry a girl in those Amish communities because they had strict rules very similar to ours, and it aligned. They also didn't allow triangles on their back of their buggy. Orange would send you to hell, they said. They also didn't have blinkers on their buggy. They also didn't have storm fronts in their buggy with the glass or fiberglass or plastic. But in northern Indiana, those Amish all had those things. And in northern Indiana, where they allow tractors during the week, they also have a license plate on their buggy, just like the worldly people have on their cars. When they first started doing that in the early 90s, my community had a fit. Even our family members that were still Amish in northern Indiana, they shunned them. You can't change the original Amish tradition by becoming worldly and putting a license plate on there and paying part of the taxation system. These Amish were having social security numbers. They paid taxes. They're working in the RV factories, camper factories in northern Indiana. They were part of the whole government system. And our group about had a heart attack, and they're like, wait a minute, that's way too far. We started with these rules in the Articles of Faith by Jacob Ammann, and we must keep that tradition if we want to get to heaven. And they believed the end of the world was coming. Back then, when I was a child, they talked about, you'd sit there on a Sunday and you'd hear the Amish preachers just get up and start weeping and crying. Oh, the Amish churches around the world are changing so fast. The end is very near. Because the Bible says people will fall away from God towards the end and all. And here we are in 2023, and there's a whole bunch of them driving tractors, and they got license plate on their buggy, and they're getting more worldly. But at that time, they felt like they were preaching that the end times is going to happen like right now. It's here. God is going to end the whole world because the Amish are changing from its original system. They're spiraling out of control, and they're starting to allow triangles and bright lights and batteries, and they're working in RV factories, and oh my goodness, it's going to be hell on earth. and so I just wanted to share that with you guys because it comes down to the ordinance. We were not even allowed to go into the city limits of Kenton, Ohio, Kenton, Ohio, to do construction work. You had to stay away from the city limits because in the city is where all the worldly people are. And now, as of recently, there are van loads. You know those Yoder-Toter vans? They come out of Indiana. They have a whole family. Maybe a father with 7, 8 boys, his sons, on the construction crew. And they come right into Kenton, Ohio, and they do work in the city. Because they have a less strict ordinance. They're allowed to do that. We couldn't even hire a driver. You had to travel within horse and buggy distance to do construction in our community when I was growing up. Now, the other day, I talked to a former Amish that said, hey, I just left in the last year, and some of the things you're sharing, they have changed. I said, oh, wow, Kenton, Ohio changed? He says, yeah, they voted on a few things that are now okay, that you have shared, that, my personal experience is what I share, but sometimes they fill me in on, hey, they now allow a flashlight with LED bulbs. I'm like, oh, really? Now you can get to heaven with that? But when I was growing up, oh, no, I couldn't even get baptized with a flashlight with LED bulbs. I had to have the regular little batteries, and it couldn't have the LED because they were just a little bit too bright, kind of like the world, a little bit too bright. So I had to have just the regular batteries. And our clocks were on the wall, them long clocks, you have to wind them up every 24 hours. You have to wind it all the way up so that it has gears in it. And it slowly undoes it over the next 24 hours. No electricity, no battery. You have to wind them up. And I was also told they started allowing these battery clocks in the school and in their homes there in Kenton. So I'm like, oh, wow. Man, hell's about to freeze over if they're bending the rules like that. So I've been learning over the years. I've been out, this year be 25 years that I've been out. So sometimes when the other former Amish leave and they fill me in on these things, I'm shocked too, because we were the group that wanted to stay original. We were very proud. I remember as a young Amish kid, I would brag to other Amish, that were from other communities that, it's not going to be good for you on Judgment Day. We were very prideful. We said, hey, we got the most rules. We're Amish. We're original Amish. We keep those rules. And we were willing to be persecuted and even killed for those rules because we believed if we died for our faith that we would instantly go to heaven. Like our forefathers, the Anabaptists, when they were being persecuted in Switzerland before they came to America, where the Amish and Mennonites birthed from. They have a book called Martyr's Mirror. And in that book, there's a whole bunch of names. And there's also a Oshpund book that has red sprinkles on the end of the pages on the book. That represents the blood that was shed by our forefathers. So that's what they look up to. They don't necessarily look at Jesus shed blood. They put their faith in their traditional beliefs and what their forefathers did and their shed blood. That's what's more important. And they're willing to die for that. Now, I admire that kind of faith. I think us Americans should be that strong in our faith and standing up for our rights because we're losing them pretty quick right now. If you know what I mean, I'll stay away from that topic. But I admire the faith that they have to stand up for what's right, to stand up what they believe in. Yeah, is it right? Is it biblical? No, it's not biblical. But anybody would look up to that and admire that wow, these people, are you kidding me? They're willing to go to jail for the blinker in Ashland, Ohio over there at Swartz and Trooper Amish. They all summer long, they've been fighting, going back out of court. They don't pay their fines. And the judge, John Good, he don't know what to do now because they were going to impound their horse and buggies. So I think they're just going to let them off the hook because they realize this special breed of Amish are willing to die for this triangle and the state law of Ohio, the blinker and all that. They went to jail. They don't pay their fines. They don't care. They'll die for that belief. And that's why I do these videos to educate you guys on that group of Amish where I come from. They are a different breed. I would probably put a 95 to 98% of Amish in that category of advancing past the original system of Amish. Back when I left the Amish, I would probably put it at about 50 to 60%. But as of 2023, there's only a rough 3 to 5% of Amish in the world that still try to practice the original articles of faith that was introduced with their belief system, with the rules that are established in an ordinance letter that are all highlighted, signed off on, voted on. Let's keep the original rules started by our forefathers. There's only a select small percentage of Amish that still keep that. So I hope that educates you guys. I'll wrap it up with this. Let's say I wanted to start my own group. I have 209,000 subscribers on YouTube. I got 1.5 million on TikTok. And I got 140,000 followers on Facebook. Let's say I would convince all of those followers combined that I'm the one that's right. And I'm very good, like our forefather Jacob Almond was to start the Amish, to convince all of you to follow me. And you must have, my name is on there, Eli. You must have Ohio State Cups because that's the best team in the land, or you go to hell. Wouldn't that be a rule? But let's say I'm so good at convincing all of my followers that this is the way to go. You must believe in Ohio State. You must worship that team because they're the best. And you must wear this and that. You can now wear these Carhartt gloves. And you have to have those on to do work, or you go to whatever rules. You know where I'm going with it. And I could literally get a following to follow me and obey what I'm saying. That's what happens with a lot of these groups. The Church of God Restoration did that. They are following what they now call the chief apostles, Ray Tinsman, Stephen Hargrave. They are worshipped. They are praying, not in Jesus' name. When they do their prayer, they're praying in Ray's name. I mean, guys, these little groups of cults are everywhere. So what is the definition of a cult? A lot of people also get mad when I call them a cult. A lot of Amish, even former Amish, hate when I say that. But what I just described with this coffee cup, that I would get all of my followers to follow me and my example. That is in itself a definition of a cult. If you Google it, it'll talk about one man starting something and getting many followers to believe that and follow that. That's how a cult starts. Now, once they're started, they just become worse and worse and worse and worse because it's based on pride and power and control. And that is what I'll wrap it up with I hope that educates you guys. I hope that gives you a better idea of each and every Amish group, the ones you live close by. You have to understand they may not follow the rules that I'm sharing online. They have different things that I was not allowed to have that was called too worldly. But everything in every single church is voted on what item is too worldly and what item is not too worldly. Now, a lot of people have asked me, well, what Bible verse do they go by for their rules? There ain't no Bible verse. It's the Articles of Faith introduced by Jacob Ammon, which started the Amish. So that's what's most important before the scriptures. That is also why the old order religious groups of Amish, where I come from, did not allow us to have personal Bible studies. In Schmicksburg, Pennsylvania, recently, I heard a story of the older Amish, Schwarzentrooper Amish. They shunned their own people for having Bible studies. They were not allowed to have Bible studies because if they got saved and believed and put their faith in Jesus Christ for salvation, they were told that they are being deceived by the devil. Like me, I was told that I'm very prideful to put my faith in Jesus. Well, it's biblical. It says, for by grace are you saved through faith. That's biblical. But your rules that you're putting your faith in, that's not biblical. But I share that just to give you an idea on when somebody says, hey, what Bible verse? You know, one of the reasons they hated my dad, and they really came after my dad, is because he challenged those rules. He said, hey, where in the Bible can you tell me that I have to have this beard? You know, he was already being shunned, and he was, alcoholic at the time, and he got very angry, and he whacked his whole beard off. Then they shunned him for 9 months because it took 9 months to grow it all back. And I remember him questioning them, where in the Bible can you show me that I'm supposed to have this beard to represent my marriage? And they just said, well, you don't question the elders of the church. You're supposed to do as you're told. And my dad said, that's not good enough for me. You got to show me in the Bible. You say you're Christians. You portray to the whole world that you're a Christian that follows the Bible, but yet you don't follow the Bible. So why did they hate my dad? Why did they pick on my dad and shun him so much? Because my dad was willing to step out of his comfort zone that other men did not do because they didn't want no backlash. They didn't want no division in the church. They didn't want no family division. But my dad was willing to do that. My dad stepped out of his comfort zone and questioned their beliefs and wanted answers for why they are following something that is not in the Bible, but yet they tell all English people they're doing business with they are the Bible-believing, Bible-following Christians when they were not. It was a lie from the pits of hell. And you all have a blessed day. I love you all. See ya.